Before we get started, I just have a little announcement to make. You all know the World Transformed is a 4-day festival, and it's incredible to see so many people here. But the World Transformed also wants to unlock the incredible potential of all of us here in our movement across the country, and that's why in the next week we're launching a new political education resource to try and encourage every single person here to not just attend and take part in these brilliant debates and discussions over this weekend, but also to take those discussions back to your communities where you live and build our movement even stronger. So watch out on our social media, get involved, and let's do this. Now our first speaker is Elsie Bradley Middle. She is a hero of our movement. She's here tonight to introduce Jeremy Corbyn. Elsie is a spoon striker and an acorn activist who has been fighting hard for the working class in this country. First off is Elsie Bradley Middle.
Thank you. I love Brighton. It's a city which I moved here for uni for, and despite its terrifying and angry seagull population, I fell in love with the place. It's a place which is defined by freedom, a freedom which allows everyone that lives here to be whoever they want to be. Unfortunately, it's also a city which has problems which are like those that many other towns, cities and villages across the UK are facing right now. It's got a housing crisis. The rents here are some of the highest, if not the highest, in the country. Tenants are being forced to live in slum-like conditions in an unregulated housing sector which is exploiting all of us. But sometimes you just feel lucky that you've got a roof over your head because so many other people here don't have that. It's also got a cost of living crisis. Wages here are well below the regional average. And because of this, when I lived here, I had friends who had to make the decision between heating their homes and feeding themselves. But despite these problems, Brighton is a city in which every day, ordinary people are standing up and fighting back. We, the tenants, the employees, the working class, we are sick and tired of carrying the rich on our backs. We are angry and we are ready to seize a future which gives us prosperity and security, not austerity. But we know the only way we can achieve that future is if we stand united. The many against the few. And whilst I lived in Brighton, I joined 2 incredible unions which showed just exactly that. One of those was Acorn, a community union which is doing incredible things across the country and in Brighton right now, and which all of you should join today. I joined because my landlord was refusing to fix essential repairs in our house, and because of this, we mobilised and we came together and we showed him exactly what working class power looks like. I'll never forget watching him cower in the face of our union strength and community power as he agreed to fix the repairs and pay us compensation. It was one of the best feelings I've ever had. The other union I joined was the Bakers' Food and Allied Workers Union. Being at uni, like countless others, staying afloat meant juggling my studies with a part-time job. An underfunded university system is forcing countless numbers of students into precarious work just so they can stay afloat day to day. So for me, paying my rent meant working at Wetherspoons. It was an incredibly tough job. We worked long and unsociable hours, shifts were stressful and exhausting. We had to deal with things like bullying, harassment, understaffing, low pay and insecure contracts. These conditions degraded and dehumanised us. All the while, our multi-millionaire boss, Tim Martin, made himself rich out of our hard work. But we didn't just take it. We stood up and took on our boss and we unionised our workplace. went on strike last year and we won a pay rise. A pay rise not just for Brighton Wetherspoons workers, but for Wetherspoons workers across the country. And in that fight, we stood together with other workers from McDonald's, TGI Fridays, Uber, Deliveroo, and we stood together as a workers' movement. A movement which, quite frankly, has had enough. Enough of working yourself to the bone for a wage that is next to nothing. Enough of having to accept exploitation like it's a fact of life. Enough of being hopeless. Enough of this broken, goddamn, awful system. We are putting the ruling class on notice, and we will not take it anymore. I've grown up in Tory Britain, a country where the poor have been shafted whilst the rich have got richer. A country where austerity has killed the vulnerable for the benefit of a small and select few. But that will change. And it is our movement that is going to change it. It's a movement of us here tonight, of trade unionists, of climate strikers, of precarious workers, every other comrade across the country. We are so great in number and have so much power. Together, we will turn the world upside down. Our next speaker is a man who is going to lead us in that movement. He's a man that knows exactly what it's like to struggle against the powerful. He knows that when people are given something to fight for, they will fight. He knows that he is going to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Please put your hands together for the incredible Jeremy Corbyn.
Can we start by saying thank you to Elsie for that brilliant introduction. Absolutely superb about the empowerment of people by campaigning for union rights in Deliveroo, in Uber, in McDonald's, or all those other places. And can I just say this, let's put our hands together for this now. 300 volunteers have helped to make the world transform a great success yet again. Can we say a big thank you to all of them, because the world transformed is a very, very strong presence every year at the Labour Party conference. Every year it's different. We now had a big tent that looks like a Hollywood socialism. I always knew socialism was going to come to Hollywood sometime, and it's happened here in Brighton. Well done. Well done, the world transformed. But it's also in the traditions of our movement. This tent, these rooms, these other places all across Brighton are the factory, the crucible of ideas and inspiration and learning and knowledge and understanding each other's disputes and struggles and all that goes with it. And I remember from the first Labour Party conference I ever went to, I was bowled over by all the fringe meetings that I could go to and learn about different issues on housing, on environment and international issues and so on. And what the World Transformed does is creates that friendly, open, welcoming space where people can come, express their ideas, explore their ideas and their attitudes, test them with other people, but above all, leave empowered, determined, committed in order to put those ideas into practice, in order to truly transform our world. On Friday, I wanted some education. I need education. We all do. You never stop learning, you know. And so I went down to my town hall. There were 500 school children there. They were telling me and everyone else about the damage to their environment done by our systems, and the damage done to the world by our systems, and the dangers associated with global warming and all that goes with it. And whilst Tory politicians and others, probably the Evening Standard, I couldn't be bothered to read it on Friday, so I don't know, but condemned them all for being taken out of school to go to that event, I thought they'd done the right thing, because they went there to express their point of view, and all those, in this case, primary school students, I think went away from feeling empowered of what they could do and the ideas they could develop and put into practice. That is what empowerment is about. And so this whole global climate events that happened all over the world on Friday is really quite amazing. The last time there was a global series of events and demonstrations was February the 15th, 2003, against the Iraq War. More than a million of us were in Hyde Park, and there were demonstrations in 600 cities all around the world on that day. And whilst the horrors that followed after that, yes, they happened, and yes, the results of that war continues to happen, a whole lot of people became very empowered of what they can do. All those people all over the world that went on those demonstrations on Friday will feel, when they are complaining about global warming, when they are complaining about pollution, when they are challenging a local factory for putting effluent in a river, when they're challenging a bus company for not having clean buses, and all the other environmental issues we face, they'll suddenly feel they were no longer alone. I've never forgotten. Earlier in 2003, I was at an anti-war demonstration in Washington, D.C. It was very cold. They told me it wasn't really cold at all. It was only -10. I tell you, it seemed pretty cold to me, but there you go. And we had to wait around a long time. There were lots of speakers and so on. And I got talking to 4 people that had driven for 18 hours from the Midwest in order to be at that demonstration. And I said to them, "Why do you do it?" And they said, "Because our community, somehow or other, believes a war in Iraq is a good idea. In our guts, in our bones, in our hearts, we feel it's wrong. We want to come here to be with like-minded people, that we can go back to the US Midwest and carry a message that peace is a better way than going to war." And they felt empowered as a result of it. And so the climate change demonstrations have had a massive effect. Our party is putting forward the green industrial revolution in the USA. We call it the Green New Deal. We're in touch with Bernie, AOC, and lots of others on how we can take this forward. Because the climate and environmental emergency is real, it's serious, it's here, it's now. It is the burning of the Amazon, it is the burning of Angola, it is the burning of the Congo, it's also deforestation in parts of Europe, it's also air quality in Beijing, in Delhi, in London, in Glasgow. It's also pollution in Texas, it's also damage to African rivers all over. It is about exploitation, but it's also about the inequality of it. It's the poorest people in the poorest communities that eat the worst food and breathe the worst air and have the shortest life expectancy. And it's also the poorest countries that have the lowest level of emissions that pay the highest price for global warming from the emissions that have come from the richest countries around the world. And so the Paris Climate Change Accords were a very, very important way forward. A Labour government, our Labour government, and it will be our Labour government, will not walk hand in hand with Donald Trump and say, yes, Donald, we understand the special needs of your country. We'll be the ones that say, Paris, good. Go further, go faster. Reach zero emissions well before 2050. Well before 2050. But it's also, and I'm sure you all understand this, it's about taking people with us. Taking people with us in how you can deal with the issues of climate change, of pollution, by developing green industrial jobs. Last Saturday, I was in Fife, in Scotland, supporting work. Well done, thank you. Fantastic place. Supporting workers there at Bifab and other companies that want to make the wind turbines that can be erected off the Scottish coast. The wind that blows to the west coast of Scotland could be used to provide 5% of the entire UK electricity demand. But it requires investment to do it. It requires investment in undersea cables, in interconnected cables, and obviously in the wind turbines themselves. But the benefit is absolutely massive. And so Becky Long-Bailey, Sue Hayman and Barry and Danny Rowley have taken this forward as part of our environmental team in the party. So there will be a green industrial revolution with the Labour government. There will be construction of wind farms. There will also be investment in the Swansea Bay Lagoon. There will also be investment in the Mersey Barrage. And so these are all important ways that we bring people together. And surely our job as activists is to discuss this with others so a community feels empowered of what it's achieving itself. And all of you, I'm sure, will know what it's like when you're faced with a bad landlord in bad housing, when you're faced with somebody that's trying to close down your A&E department in your hospital, when you're faced with school overcrowding. You start a campaign, you start the letters, you start the petition, you get the meetings going, and you gradually get people more involved. They become more aware as they go on. They become more understanding of how these decisions have come about, and they become more angry at the situation they're in. And then you stop the closure of an A&E. You make sure a nursery stays open. You protect a park, all the things that you do, and suddenly the whole community is empowered and stronger as a result of it. And so the whole philosophy behind community organising in the Labour Party is about our party, our movement, our 500,000 people being involved in those community struggles all over the country. And it's that creative mass, it's that creative determination which will rattle the cages of the wealthy elite who are so, apparently, the Financial Times tells me, nervous about the prospects of a Labour government. So, our movement is about strengthening people, but it's also about supporting those that have been so grievously treated. Austerity was a political choice in 2010. It wasn't a necessity, it was a political choice. The political choice was made. The political choice started with a budget that slashed local government spending, that slashed health spending, that slashed benefit spending. It was a choice that raised student fees by 300% to 9,000 a year. It was a choice that raised tribunal fees. It was a choice that created the hostile environment. It was a choice that froze wages in the public sector. And it was also a choice to give tax relief at the top, to give tax giveaways, to give tax breaks, and turn a blind eye to the tax havens all around the world. And it was a political choice that developed the privatisation of our railways, our water, our mail, and so much else. So an incoming Labour government, yes, public ownership for rail, mail, water and the national grid. But it will be public ownership with a difference. It will not be the top-down nationalisation of the 1940s. It will be a community-based public ownership. Who are the really skilled people on our railways? I talk to people on the London and North Eastern Railway, because I travel up and down quite a lot between Edinburgh and London and so on. And I talk to people who sort of say, yeah, now that year I was working for, who was it working for? GNER. That year I was working for, that was Stagecoach, that was Virgin. Who had us that time? But you know what? It's the same people on the same train, on the same line, the same people with enormous skill that make the railways run, not the fly-by-night financiers who move in and out. Bring it back into public ownership. And that's what I'm determined to do. But also, as John MacDonald has explained, it's about empowerment of people at the workplace. It's support for cooperatives. It's allowing workers buyouts and so many other things. But it's also about the totality of our society, and I'll finish with this. Our education system needs a lot of development. That's why Angela and myself are very keen on the National Education Service. The principle being, take the commodity out of education and insert it with a big word beginning with R. It's called the right to education. And that right to education means that we bring back the family of local schools, we reduce the levels of competition between schools, and that in turn, I believe, will reduce the number, if not eliminate altogether, the levels of school exclusions and all the problems that come as a result of that. It's properly funding education and giving support to all students and all young people in education. So these are just some of our ideas. And in The World Transformed, look at the literature, look at the music, and look at the history of those inspirational people that stood up against injustice in the 17th and 18th century. What Dawn was saying today about the Emancipation Education Trust, that our children can learn that black history is part of British history, that colonial history is part of our history. And so, we're empowered by our history, not cowed by our history. Our movement is strong. Our movement is vibrant. Our movement is inclusive. Our movement is the movement against racism, is the movement for social justice. Our movement is the movement of empowerment of people. So, campaigning on all those issues, that creative mass coming together, is that creative mass that we will take into an election campaign against a Prime Minister who wants to take us over the cliff, out of the EU, into the arms of Donald Trump. I'm not having any of that. You're not having any of that. Give the people a choice in the future, but above all, it's a choice of how we develop a fairer, more decent, more inclusive, more civilized society. I do not want to live in a country where people rely on food banks in order to survive, where scrape to get by and their children underachieve because of the inadequacy of their housing and their lifestyle. It's not a lifestyle choice, it's a lifestyle forced on them by an unfair, wrong system. Our purpose is to change it. The World Transformed. Thank you very much.